I've never thought that I would be saying this late last year in November when the Indiana Fever hired Stephanie White. I never thought I'd be saying this right now, only 19 games into the 2025 season, that it's time for Stephanie White to go. The Indiana Fever needs to fire Stephanie White. This is not going to work. What we're seeing is not going to work. It's just not going to work. Stephanie White yesterday reduced Caitlin Clark to a role player. She turned a star into a role player like we've never seen before. While Tyler Marsh is trying to turn Angel Reese into a star, Stephanie White is trying to turn Caitlin Clark into a role player. Let that sink in. We're going to talk about that right now. Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Rudy's Rant, Her Game, Her Way Women's Basketball. We talk facts over feelings. I'm your host, Rudy Rodriguez Show Mott. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment. Appreciate y'all continued support of this channel. Appreciate everyone jumping on board last night on the live. As we delved into this a little bit last night and talked about this specific situation, Caitlin Clark comes back from an injury, in my opinion, too quickly. It was almost as if they wanted to get her back for summer camp day. I'll repeat that again. I believe that. I genuinely believe that they try to push her back for summer camp day. And Stephanie White made Caitlin Clark a role player. She took her off the ball. She took the best point guard in the WNBA off the ball. She took the best passer in the history of the WNBA off the ball. She stuck her in a corner or stuck her on the wing, and she made her have almost zero impact on the offense and the success of this team. Indiana Fever scored 61 points in an 80-61 loss. Stephanie White decided in her infinite wisdom that she was going to start Ari McDonald at point guard and put Caitlin Clark at the 3. And Lexi Hull went to the bench. So that entire move, all in itself, to me, is a fireable offense. The best point guard in the league, let's move her and play the 3. The best passer in the league, let's move her and play the 3. And let's go put another player on the bench who is exactly like another player you already have on the bench. Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull are pretty much very similar style and player. They're the same height, the same size. They do the same thing. Lexi Hull does shoot the ball a tad bit better than Sophie Cunningham. Neither of them can dribble. They're both energy players. They both play defense. They both play with effort typically. You don't need 2 players like that coming off of your bench. It doesn't make sense. You need spark plugs coming off of your bench. Ari McDonald would be a spark plug coming off of your bench at point guard. It would allow you to actually sit Caitlin Clark. Running them at the same time, outside of maybe a couple of minutes a game, is foolish. It's bad coaching. It's bad decision making. Running Caitlin Clark off the ball for almost the entire game is bad coaching. It's bad decision making. Outside of the first 5 minutes of that game, when Caitlin Clark was aggressive, despite the fact she's playing off the ball, Indiana's doing well. But as the game progressed, the aggression stopped, and the reality became that Ari McDonald was running the offense and Caitlin Clark was just a piece of it. Stephanie White made that decision. Stephanie White told you what she wanted to do. And Caitlin Clark acquiesced and took a step back. Threw her in the corner, threw her on the wing, and she almost never touched the ball. You asked a player who, for the duration of her life, forget about WNBA career, for her life, has always had the ball in her hands. Now, I understand professional sports are different from high school sports, they're different from college sports, they're different from elementary school sports. Things change as you matriculate in sports. Not with Caitlin Clark. She was a first team all WNBA player last year. She led the league in assists last year. She was 6th in scoring last year. She was the number 1 pick in the draft last year. We're not talking about Patrick Beverly, who was a great high school player and a really good college player, becoming a defensive stopper in the NBA. We're talking about and who was, I don't even know if Patrick Beverly was a 2nd round pick, I think it was. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the number 1 pick in the draft. The number 1 pick in the draft is a star or a potential star or a future star, but it's that person is drafted to be a star. Anthony Edwards was not taking number 1 to be sitting in the corner. Even though he's not actually a point guard, but quite often Anthony Edwards has the ball, dribbling the ball up the floor. But Caitlin Clark is a point guard. Caitlin Clark operates with the ball in her hands. We're not talking about a possession here and there. We're talking about the entire game, for almost the entire game. Whenever Aari McDonald was on the floor with Caitlin Clark, the ball was in the hands of Aari McDonald. Aari McDonald wasn't on the basketball team 4 weeks ago. Aari McDonald did not make a WNBA franchise this season. She was cut. And while we may love her and love the energy and excitement and the joy and the passion that she brings, I don't need to see Aari McDonald ever shoot 7 3-point shots in a game in life. In life. Yet that's what she did yesterday. She took more threes than Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark. And if you want to add Lexi Hull as well, 7 threes. And you put the ball in her hands. That's not gonna ever work. Caitlin Clark shot 0 free throws. Why? Because Caitlin Clark didn't have the ball. Caitlin Clark was turned into a de facto role player to catch the ball and shoot the ball, or once in a while maybe get a fast break here and there. But she was ineffective. She was completely ineffective. And instead of Stephanie White trying to figure out a way to flip that, she just continued to do exactly what she did from the start of the game through the end of the game. Every time Indiana started to look good for a second with Caitlin Clark, what did Stephanie White do? She sat her on the bench. She sat her on the bench. We are talking about a malpractice. This is coaching malpractice. You hire a coach to make players better. Caitlin Clark probably shouldn't have played early this year. She absolutely has had a quad injury. And it reoccurred, and it took her off her stride. Let me give you some numbers. The Indiana Fever this year, when Caitlin Clark has played up until yesterday. I'm not including yesterday's game because that was not Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark didn't have the ball. I can promise you this. If Caitlin Clark, even injured, if Caitlin Clark has the ball in her hands, the Indiana Fever score more than 61 points. They might not score 90 points, but the damn sure ain't scoring 61 points on their home floor if Caitlin Clark is running point guard, even for the 25 minutes that she played. You want to know why? Aaliyah Boston took 8 shots. Aari McDonald took more shots than Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah Boston had 6 points. Aari McDonald had 7. And I'm not picking on Aari McDonald. I'm making a point. Because Caitlin Clark is playing off the ball, they're not running pick and roll with Aaliyah Boston. The play that makes Aaliyah Boston most effective. So that play was pretty much a null and void and didn't exist yesterday. It's literally how their offense is run. Everything they ran yesterday was backwards. You're asking a player who has never done this before, never played off the ball pretty much her entire career, not like this, to now all of a sudden in 2 days, because remember, she all of a sudden was able to practice on Monday and then Tuesday and now play a game on Wednesday. And you completely switch the offense and say, Caitlin, you need to fit in where you fit in. No, you're not our star. You're a role player. You're a role player. And watching that, what we watched yesterday was an abomination of basketball. If Caitlin Clark is the starting point guard, I don't know if they win the game. I don't know. I really don't know. I know they don't score 61 points. I know Aaliyah Boston probably has 20 and not 6. I know that Kelsey Mitchell probably feels more comfortable and doesn't go 3 for 13. Like all of these decisions have an impact. I know that Lexi Hull's not coming off of the bench if Caitlin Clark is the point guard. I know that when Caitlin Clark comes out of the game, I got a spark plug for a point guard. So because instead, Ari McDonald in the first half played 18 minutes of the 20 minutes in the first half. She had the ball in her hands the entire first half. She had the ball in her hands the entire second quarter, in which they were outscored 20-9 when the game pretty much got away from them. This is what happened. This is what happened. And Stephanie White walks into a press conference and blames the players. Yeah, it's the players' fault. Yeah, I'm not absolving players. Players have to make shots. Players absolutely have to make shots. Players have to play with, the highest of efforts. But what we got here is coaching malpractice. The Indiana Fever, when Caitlin Clark has played, excluding yesterday's game, averaged 88.2 points per game. The Indiana Fever, when Caitlin Clark has not played, excluding yesterday's game, averaged 79.8 points per game. That is a 8.4 points per game difference. They are plus 8.4 points when Caitlin Clark plays to when Caitlin Clark doesn't play. Why is that, you ask? When she doesn't play, they slow the game down. As I would expect you would. You don't have the best passer and tempo creator in the league. So they'll slow the game down. So I am not against that. But sitting here and telling me that their defense gets infinitely better when she doesn't play is a falsehood. It's a lie. It's not true. It's not true because when you slow the game down and slow the possessions down and take less shots, and there are less possessions because you've slowed the game down, your defense is going to look like it's better. It's not better. It's the same shit turd defense they've had all season. They make the same mistakes every single game. The players make the same exact mistakes every single game. You see players that don't know how to close out on shots. They jump at every pump fake. They get blown by. And this is everybody on this team. I'm not singling any individual out. This is every single player on this team. Discussed it last night. I've never seen a team that has such an inability to close out properly on a shooter while bending your knees. You don't jump on every pump fake. This is the WNBA. Most of these players can't shoot. This isn't the NBA. Most of these players cannot shoot the ball. The Indiana Fever are 6 of 27 from 3. Golden State might be one of the top 3-point shooting teams in terms of they jack a lot of threes. They were still 12 of 32. What are you jumping for pump fakes? Make them shoot it. Close out hard, but stay on your feet. Don't jump. I watched Caitlin do it. I watched Sophie do it. I watched Lexi do it. I watched Kelsey do it. I watched Aaliyah do it. I watched every player, Ari do it. I watched every player jump at a pump fake yesterday at the 3-point line. Every player. And get blown by. This team got out rebounded by 11. So, yeah, those are effort situations. It wasn't like Golden State shot the ball well. They shot 37% and won by 19. Indiana shot 31%. Do you think the adjustment to the offense and putting Caitlin Clark in the corner didn't have anything to do with that? You don't think that had anything to do with that? Prior to this game, Indiana shot 47% against Chicago, 49% against Atlanta, 45% against Atlanta, 45% against New York, 48% against New York. These are the games that Caitlin Clark had played. 46% against Connecticut, 44% against Golden State, the game they lost by 12. 49% versus Vegas. 51% versus Seattle. So until this game in which they shot 30.9% against Golden State, when the ball has been in Caitlin Clark's hands, this team has shot between 44 and 51% from the field in every single game that she has played. Why do you think that is? Easy buckets, wide open shots. It's the Caitlin Clark effect. Everyone's open because she's on the floor. Everyone's open because she gets double teamed. Everyone's open because she gets trapped. And she finds her teammates open. Does she make mistakes? Yes. Is she perfect? No. But I'm going to take my chances with that over what I just saw yesterday, where they shot 31% from the field because you put Caitlin Clark off the ball and handed the ball to a backup point guard who wasn't on a team a month and a half ago. I'm not going to outwardly say that she's sabotaging Caitlin Clark, but I think this is an example of coaching trying to prove a point. A coach is trying to prove a point. A coach is trying to show you, I'm the boss, and you do what I say. The problem with Caitlin Clark is, and God bless her, is that she doesn't open her mouth, at least not publicly. Because if this was an if this was an NBA team, the coach would be fired today. Stephanie White would have been fired today. Because there's no way in hell a superstar level player in the NBA would sit back and watch this happen and say, this bitch just took me off of the ball. Can you imagine just tossing a star point guard into the corner for the entirety of a game? Can you imagine making a decision where you switch the starting lineup and you take out your best defensive player in the starting lineup and you throw her onto the bench? Again, you know how I feel about Lexi Hull, but I'm not going to argue the fact that she's not the best defensive player in the starting lineup, despite her flaws. She absolutely is the best defensive player on this team in the starting lineup. And you send her to the bench? This is what Stephanie White did. This is not an experiment. This is a professional sport. This isn't the preseason where you try out shit like this. This is your season. This is your season. This team is 8.4 points better with Caitlin Clark on the court offensively. Defensively, Indiana gave up 81.8 points per game in the 9 games that Caitlin Clark had played prior to yesterday. In the games that she hadn't played, they gave up 76.3. So they were plus 3.5 in the games that she didn't play, and they were plus 6.4 in the games that she did play. So I ask you the question, would I rather have a track meet or walk the ball up the floor? I'd rather have a track meet. I'd rather give up more points because I'm going to score more points. The reason that the other team scores more points and their defense looks worse is because they're pushing tempo more. When Caitlin Clark has the ball, they're pushing tempo. They're pushing pace. They're not waiting until there's 3 seconds to go on a shot clock to take a shot. They're running pick and rolls. Boom, boom, boom. There's no waiting around. There's not a ton of late shot clock shots that this team takes when Caitlin Clark is running point guard. But when she's not, there's a lot of late shot clock shots that go up because you're slowing it down. So is that 76.3, which is 5.5 less points per game, when she doesn't play that great? No, it's because they've just slowed tempo down. The tempo is way down. Just giving an example. They took 75 shots in the season opener versus the Chicago Sky. In the first game that they played without Caitlin Clark against the Washington Mystics, they took 63 shots. 12 shots less. In that same game, Chicago shot 79 shots. In that game versus the Washington Mystics, the first game without Caitlin Clark, the Mystics shot 69 shots. It's a 10-shot difference for the opposing team and a 12-shot difference for your team. I just pulled one game. The pace is slower, way slower. So that 5 points per game that you have as a difference, 5.5 points, that's another team going 3 of 10 from the field. That's 30% shooting. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that they're better defensively when Caitlin Clark plays. Caitlin Clark is a great defense player. I'm not saying that. But when you push tempo, you push speed, you make people run, and you wear their asses out, guess what? They naturally start shooting the ball worse because they're getting tired. Women get tired at a different rate than men do. The backups in the WNBA are not anywhere near as good as the starters in the WNBA. I think we all know that. And Stephanie White gets up here. Heck, I'll let you hear it for yourself. This is what Stephanie White had to say after the game.
Summarize kind of what you saw out there.
I was disappointed because I felt like there was a lack of competitive fire. With the exception of about 2 5-minute spurts, our attention to detail was poor. I'm not.
I'm going to stop it right there. With the exception of about 2 5-minute spurts. You want to know what those 2 5-minute spurts were? The first 5 minutes of the game, when Caitlin Clark was aggressive, despite the fact that she was put off the ball, and the 5-minute spurt in the third quarter when Caitlin Clark was running point guard and Aaron McDonald wasn't in the game. Those were the 5-minute spurts that she's talking about. They cut the game to 55-50. And what did she do? She took Caitlin Clark out. Every time Caitlin Clark got something going, she took her out. But those are the 2 5-minute spurts. The 5-minute spurts did not happen with Caitlin Clark pretty much in the second quarter because she was in the corner doing nothing. Fourth quarter, whatever.
Sure if it's not knowing the game plan, as much as because if it's not knowing the game plan, then that's a whole nother.
Oh, you bet your ass they don't know the game plan because you changed the game plan in the last 2 days. You just made your superstar point guard a backup point guard. You made your superstar point guard a role player. That's what you did. Listen to her. Listen to what she has to say. I'm sorry I'm cutting it off, but it's just disgusting.
Conversation as much as not executing the game plan. Our attention to detail, undisciplined. I felt like our energy and our competitive fire was not there, and that's disappointing.
So they didn't execute that shit turd game plan. So what was the game plan, Stephanie? What exactly was the game plan to have Caitlin Clark be off the ball the entire game? Are you going to ask the player who, over the past, I don't know, she's 23, over the past 18 years of her life, to now be an off-ball player, stand in the corner, run off screens? Oh yeah, did I mention she's just coming off of a groin injury? She's coming off of a quad injury. She did turn her ankle in this game as well. But you're asking the player who's just coming off of an injury to now run around like Steph Curry, something that she's never done in her career, and then run off screens that are horribly set because women don't set screens very well, not in this team at the very least. If you're going to run her off staggered screens, how about they actually set a screen? They don't know how to set a screen. Like, this is not what was the game plan. Like, no, they didn't execute it. Of course not. You changed you changed the fundamental basics of this team over a game.
I guess, why do you think you had some of these inconsistencies when it comes to focus and engagement, things like that?
I'd say discipline more so than focus. I think this is a group that focuses, but you can focus, and then you have to be able to go out and be disciplined enough to execute it, right? Um, I'm not sure. As coaches, that's our job to figure it out. Why it is. You've seen it in spurts. You've seen it in moments. You've seen it with certain lineups. So for us, finding those lineups that we've seen it with consistently, and maybe keeping those together. There's always going to be adjustments when you're working people back into the lineup. There's no question about that. But the competitiveness and the attention to detail.
Adjustments. We're working people back in the line. Okay, so let's see here. We're gonna the adjustment that we're gonna make. This is the adjustment that this is the coach telling you after the game. The adjustment that we're gonna make, working someone back into the lineup, your best player, your star point guard, is to not make her the point guard. That's your adjustment. You're a fucking moron. You're a fucking moron. That is coaching malpractice. You're sitting here telling the media, telling the people that it's difficult to work your star back into the game. I've never heard it be difficult working a star back into a game. I've never heard of that ever in my life. I've never seen a star who has the ball in her hands 90% of the game on offense. Leads the offense 90% of the time. I'm just throwing out a number. I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to presume it's about 90%. And you're going to sit here and tell me, let's take the ball out of her hands. She's going to have the ball today in her hands about 20% of the time, leading the offense. She had 6 assists despite the fact that she did not lead the offense. Everything that she does, you took away from her. You made it where she couldn't do it. There was a saying that the only guy that could stop Michael Jordan from scoring was Dean Smith. The only guy that could stop Michael Jordan from scoring was Dean Smith. We never knew how good Michael Jordan was, despite the fact that we knew he was amazing. We never knew how good he was in college because we never really saw the version of Michael Jordan that you saw in the NBA because of Dean Smith. Can you imagine if Dean Smith had taken off the collar and taken off the leash and let Jordan go? He might have averaged 35 a game in college. But that's not how they played. But that's how they practiced for the entirety that he was there. So it's not like it was anything different for him. This is brand new. And you're going to remove the ball. And Jordan wasn't a point guard. Can you imagine getting Chris Paul and saying, Chris, go stand in a corner? Chris Paul, in every location he's ever been to in the NBA, has gotten so much better when he's been there. Has he won a championship? No. Doesn't matter. When he has gone to a team, that team has gotten so much better, whether it's the Pelicans, the Clippers, even the Spurs, OKC, every stop that Chris Paul has made, Houston, the team has gotten so much better because he's an actual point guard floor general who dictates pace, tempo, movement, motion, passing, and he puts his teammates in the best position to be successful. If it wasn't for the fact that James Harden is a disappearing act in game 7s, the Houston Rockets would have probably won a championship with Chris Paul. And also injuries plagued him also in Houston and Los Angeles at the wrong times. But that guy always made his teammates better, made his teams better. And you're going to take that away from Caitlin Clark and go throw her in the corner. That was the coaching decision.
And willingness to play with multiple levels of effort. Prime examples when we get defensive stops, but then they get multiple offensive rebounds. That's 1-2. That's competitive fire.
That's half and half. That's half and half. That's coaching. That's teaching boxing out. That's having bigs that can rebound. That's having bigs. You're a small team. When you throw out Dantas and Timpson and with Caitlin and Kelsey Mitchell and whoever, that's a small roster. But that's also teaching boxing out, which I don't think any woman in this league can actually do properly, besides probably Angel Reese. Most of these women don't know how to box out.
And that's unacceptable.
Yeah, you had that lineup change, kind of putting Caitlin in for Lexi instead of Ari. Just what did you like about Caitlin and Ari starting the game together and Lexi coming off the bench?
Yeah, I mean, I like the ability to have two primary ball handlers on the floor, particularly with a team that comes aggressively, in the two-man game, being able to play off of one another.
How are they going to play off of one another when one of them can't shoot the ball for a lick? How can you play a two-man game when one of those players cannot shoot a lick? It's not the same. Kelsey Mitchell's not a ball handler, but Lord have mercy, they can play Caitlin Clark off Kelsey Mitchell all day because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Because Kelsey Mitchell will knock down a three and Caitlin Clark will knock down a three. They're both dangerous from the perimeter. Aaron McDonald's not dangerous from the perimeter. So what two-man game did you run? Did you run a two-man game with them? No, you did not. Two ball handlers. That was her logic. Two ball handlers. But I'm going to take the ball out of the hands of my primary ball handler and put it into the hands of my secondary ball handler as my game plan.
Being able to give the opponent some different looks, and
if I'm Golden State and I'm sitting here and I'm watching this, I'm saying, you're going to give the ball to Aaron McDonald. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. You just made my life so much easier. Why would I ever have to double her? I wouldn't. I don't have to double Aaron McDonald. When Caitlin Clark has the ball, first off, when Caitlin Clark has the ball, let me draw a picture of it for you. When Caitlin Clark has the ball here, the three-point line, guess where the defensive player is? Right there where I have that line. So you've just pulled a defender out. But when Aaron McDonald has the ball right there, the defender is going to stand on the three-point line. So what have you done? You've changed the way the defense plays by having Aaron McDonald running a point next to Caitlin Clark. Because Caitlin Clark's pulling a defender out and making them have to come out further to guard her. Why? Because she can shoot the ball from anywhere. But you decided I'm going to put the ball in the hands of Aaron McDonald. You can put the ball in the hands of Aaron McDonald all day when she's in the game without Caitlin Clark, but not with her Caitlin Clark in the game.
Quite frankly, for C specifically, not having to have her play under duress 94 feet the entire time she's on the floor. So there were some things that we liked about it. There were some things that we don't. So we'll continue to work with that.
Just in general, with Caitlin returning to the floor today, a little short of 25 minutes. How did you think she looked out there? And she said it might take a little bit of time for her to get her win back, but it's nothing, just kind of the normal thing you'd expect out of that point.
Yeah, I thought there were periods of time where she really looked good. I was really pleased, especially the first play of the game with, I think she had like 2 or 3 deflections on that first possession defensively. I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I don't worry about Caitlin getting back into the flow offensively. I worry about, I wouldn't say worry, but I think my biggest concern is when we reintegrate her, how do we continue to keep our ball movement and getting the ball going, not just side to side, but baseline to baseline.
What the fuck is she talking about? How do you reintegrate her with your ball movement? Oh, you mean with your motion offense? How do you... God. People, great coaches adjust to great players. It's not the other way around. The great players don't have to adjust to the coach. The coach is supposed to create a system for the great player to make the great player better, not force the great player to play a style doesn't make that great player great. She's backwards. Reintegrate her. The flow of the offense, ball movement. I thought she was going to say there defensively. You want to know what you do defensively to reintegrate her? Guess what? Play zone.
No, but I was a little bit concerned, defensively, just lots of movement, lots of lateral movement. I thought
play zone.
She looked good at times, and I think that's just building consistency and building her endurance and all of that. So I was pleased.
Play zone.
The mini part of the performance Timpson had a wonderful game all around. What kind of growth have you seen from her? Steadily like that, or just waiting for that kind of moment?
Yeah, it's been steady growth. She's been earning more minutes. For every young player, coming into the league, particularly post position, it's learning the feel and her ability to continue to grow, continue to get her work in outside of practice time.
I don't believe anything she says about Timpson. I don't believe a word she says about Timpson. Because Timpson started playing when Dantas left. That's what happened. Timpson started playing when Dantas left. It wasn't that she did anything special in practice. It's that Stephanie White didn't have much of a choice. And I think there was a conversation that came from above that says, you got to stop playing Brianna Turner over Timpson. Because you're not going to sit here and tell me that Brianna Turner in practice early on in the season looked better than Timpson. You were told to play her. That's why you're playing her. You're lying. We know it. Whatever.
With Keith, our player development coach, and being ready when her number's called. I mean, you can see she's got really good instincts on the defensive end of the floor. She's continuing to find her way on the offensive end of the floor. She's bouncy, so she gives us a different type of look, on the interior. And there's no substitute for experience. So in some areas where opponents might take advantage, it's just experience. And I think she's come so far in these last 4 or 5 games and anticipate her continued growth.
I know you mentioned a little bit about like Caitlin and integrating herself back in the offense, but in general, with shooting 31%, some of the turnovers, what did you think was the biggest issue on that end of the floor?
Yeah, I think our decision making was not very good. At times I felt like we passed up open shots early, sometimes in shot clock, and then over penetrated, and we weren't getting better shots. A team like Golden State, who's really solid defensively, who try to force you into tough twos. When we drew them into the paint, we tried to shoot over 4 or 5 people instead of our seeing our easy passes out. Sometimes we've seen, with our group, that physicality lends.
Who was making those easy passes out? Who? Because Caitlin Clark didn't have the ball. So who was making those easy passes out? Which player has that ability to make those passes? Okay.
Us to getting tunnel vision. So we got to continue to work that. I think sometimes some of the turnovers in transition just maybe a little too overzealous, a little too anxious. Those moments where we're making a run, we cut it to 5, and then you give up an offensive rebound that starts a 9-1 run. I mean, those are pivotal moments. I think we gave up 10 offensive rebounds in the second half while we're playing from behind. You can't do that. So really our discipline to the details and not skipping steps to look to the next thing. We have to take care of the thing that's right in front of us. That might be an all-ball screen coverage. That might be a first screen or first action in offense, but we have to put first things first in everything that we do.
That was Stephanie White, people. The most accountable lacking coach I have. She's the most zero accountable having coach I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen a coach be less accountable than Stephanie White. She completely lacks accountability in everything that she does. That's where we are right now, folks. And it's not changing. This woman is dead set on doing it her way because she's the boss. She does not adjust to the talent that she has. She brought over DeWanna Bonner, and DeWanna Bonner was a disaster. Largely probably damaged the locker room early on this season. You brought Caitlin Clark back way too soon. Twice, in my opinion. And now you want to run an offense with Caitlin Clark off of the ball, and you sit here in a press conference telling us this is the most brilliant thing ever. And there's no accountability on your end for that decision. There's nothing that you could see from that decision that worked. Nothing. Nothing. Not after the first 5 minutes. But I'm done. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. Stephanie White must be fired. If this was the NBA, she'd have been fired today. I'm just curious to know what y'all think because I've had it. I've absolutely had it. She should be fired, and she should be fired sooner rather than later. Because the later you do it, the more likely this entire season's gonna go up in smoke. But that's all I got. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. This is Rudy's Rant, Her Game, Her Way Women's Basketball. Come on now.